Hey there everybody, Christy Nickel here, founder of Lean U, where we teach you all about lean and provide you the tools to implement it. We teach you the 7 types of waste that are utilizing your resources and your cash needlessly. We teach you the lean tools so you can see where these wastes are happening within your business and eliminate them. And most importantly, we show you how to get the right people involved from the very beginning so you can figure out the best way to apply the tools within your business and the solutions are effective and sustainable. In today's video, I'm going to give you a really high-level introduction to what lean is, and then I'm going to teach you the 7 types of waste that lean is focused on reducing. So there are really 2 main parts to lean. There's the technical tools, and there's the culture change involved. Now, the technical tools are fairly straightforward. Lean is all about identifying where waste is happening within your processes and eliminate it. And by waste, we mean anything sucking up your resources and your time and your materials and not bringing any value to your customer. The culture side is a little more tricky. The tools, not a problem, I can teach you that. The more difficult part is the culture change that has to come along with the implementation of the technical tools. And that is, how do we work together as a team to make improvements in our processes? Do we all know what our business goals are? And are we all working together to get there? As problems arise, are we including the people who are impacted by those processes to figure out what is the root cause of the problem and what would an effective solution be? Are we encouraging our team members to come up with ideas? If anyone knows how to make things better, it is the people who do the work 8 hours a day. How do you utilize their knowledge and their expertise, right? And when they bring up ideas, follow up on it, right? Encourage that. That's what lean is all about in terms of the culture. It's creating the culture of continuous improvement, involving everyone in figuring out how to continually improve your processes and eliminate all of these wastes that we're going to be talking about. So now we're going to talk about those 7 types of waste that lean is focused on reducing. And the first type of waste we're going to talk about is transportation. Transportation is excessive movement of people, of information, or of material. So if I'm working in a certain work area and I have to deliver what I've just worked on to the next step, that means I have to leave what I'm doing and go deliver the material, maybe across the facility, right? So that's wasted time because I should be doing something productive and creating value for the customer. And instead, I'm just walking and delivering something. Similarly, if I need equipment or materials to do my job and they're not here and I have to leave my productive work to go find them, get them, or search for them, or if I need clarification on a question or a concern and I have to go find a supervisor, right? So that's transportation. Now, when we talk about reducing transportation, one of the first things that we look at, and often very simple, is to look at what are the sequence, what's the sequence of your processing steps and bring them in sequence and bring them close together so you don't have to spend so much time delivering things, and make sure everyone has what they need so they don't have to leave their work area to get materials or supplies. I was recently working with a company that manufactures big steel containers, like the big waste containers, and they did this analysis of how far their containers travel within their facility, and they actually measured it, and they went from raw materials, followed it all throughout the processing steps, and they were astounded to find out that each container travels 2 kilometers within their facility. Think about the time and the resources and material, equipment that's going to be required to move these humongous waste containers 2 kilometers each through their facility. So of course they were looking at bringing everything in sequence and bringing it closer together. On to the second type of waste, waiting. And waiting is periods of inactivity for people, for material, or for information. So when we talk about periods of waiting for people, it seems pretty obvious why that would be considered a waste. If I'm working in front of a machine and it goes down, and I have to sit there and wait now for someone to come and fix it, of course I'm being paid and I'm not being productive. If I have to wait for information on something, maybe you're waiting for the customer to call you with clarification on something, right? All this time that is idle. Now, I also mentioned periods of inactivity for material or for information. So if we have material waiting in front of a next processing step, if it's waiting there, that means our customers don't have it, so they're not happy, and we haven't been paid for it, right? So that's a big waste. We don't want our stuff sitting there waiting. We want to get it through our steps so we can get it into the hands of our customer. They'll be happy and tell others, and we get money in our pocket. On to the third type of waste, motion. So while transportation is physically moving further distances, motion is this. Motion is movement of people that does not add value to your product. So if I'm working in a work area, I need to constantly reach for things, get supplies that I need, get materials that I need, right? All of this small incremental time it takes to reach for things and get things, small on its own, but boy, does it add up, right? Our customers don't care about that. They don't care that you have to reach 10 times every time you make one of their products. They don't care. So why would we want to pay for that? Now, inevitably, someone out there is saying, really, Christy, motion, what is that? 2-3 seconds at a time? Yes, and in some cases, fractions of a second, but it adds up like crazy. I was recently working with a company that processes bank machine deposits. So they'd have armored cars go out, open the back of all the bank machines, take out all the envelopes, and bring it back to the center for processing. And the process that they did was fairly straightforward. They'd dump all the envelopes out onto a table, and the first employee would look at the ticky tape printed on top and record that they'd received it. And they would shift it on down to the second employee, who would face all of the printing on the envelopes the same way. And then they would put it down to the next employee, who would run it through an envelope opener, zip, and take off the top of the envelope. And then it would go to the final employee, who was sitting in front of a computer, and they would bring up all the transactions and verify the contents. Now, when we looked as a team, we just kind of sat back against a wall and were watching. One thing became really obvious. There was a whole lot of motion going on that we didn't think customers would care about. And it was one particular thing, and every machine, all of their envelopes had to be kept together because all their transactions would come up at once. So when the armored cars would go get the envelopes, they'd take all the envelopes, big stacks of them, break them into two, put 2 elastic bands around each bundle, and then put them together with 1 more elastic band. So most of the bundles had 5 elastic bands on them. So when they were brought into the facility and put on the table, the very first person records they received it. They push it downstream to the next person, who took off the 5 elastic bands, and they faced the envelopes, and the envelopes would fall all over the place because they were just on a table. And then they'd put the 5 elastic bands back on, push it downstream to the next employee, who'd take off the 5 elastic bands, put it through the envelope opener, put the 5 elastic bands back on, and then finally to the last employee, who would take off the 5 elastic bands for the last time and verify the contents. We thought, I wonder how much time this is taking. So we had one of the team members who actually worked in the area, so he was colleagues with everyone who was actually doing the work. He took a stopwatch and he went in there and he took hundreds of times to come up with how long it took to put on or take off one elastic, and he determined it was 0.8 seconds per elastic. 0.8 seconds, not even a full second. But when we added up how many times it was happening, right, 5 elastic bands per bundle over 3 shifts, it was a total of 11.8 hours a day being spent putting on and taking off elastic bands. The equivalent of 1.5 full-time people putting on and taking off elastic bands. And all that motion, do you think the customers value that? No. Customers don't care about that, right? That's what we're talking about. Incremental, yes, but does it add up? Oh, you betcha. Okay? Motion, and it happens everywhere. If you're sitting at a desk, if you're in a forklift, it doesn't matter what you're doing, there's a lot of motion involved. And there's a specific set of tools within Lean that is strictly focused, solely focused on reducing motion within any work environment. And it's called 5S, or workplace organization. And it's just making sure everyone has what they need, where they need it, dedicated location, safe, organized, efficient workplace. So we'll give you all sorts of tools on that in future videos. On to our 4th type of waste, inventory. Now in Lean, we talk about 3 main types of inventory. There's raw materials, or the stuff you're bringing in to make your products. work in process or materials you have sitting between your processing steps, just waiting to go down the line. And you have finished goods, or all your great finished products that you're waiting for customers to purchase. When we talk about the cost of inventory, what we focus on is the amount of space it's taking up and the impact on your lead times and your cash flow, right? So for an example, I recently did a tour of a company and they made all sorts of wire products. So you know the lovely flower planters, the wire flower planters that hang from light fixtures down the streets and stuff like that. Lovely products. And they brought in all of the raw materials from overseas. Since it was coming from overseas, it took 2 months to get here. Because it took so long to get here, they ordered huge amounts of it. So we're in their facility, and I'm looking, and I'm eyeballing it. It must have been about 20% of their entire work area dedicated just to holding all of the raw materials, these massive spools of wire in all different gauges. And think about that. You have to pay for leasing costs for that amount of space. You have to heat it. You have to light it. Heaven forbid you have an inventory count come and you have to count all of that and you have to move it and you could damage it, right? Because you have so much of it, it could sit there for quite a long time before it ever enters your processing stream to be made into something that you could sell and get paid for. So it's just waiting there, right? Then when we had a look on their processes, I noticed there were huge pallets of work in process between their processes. Now, if it's waiting there, first of all, that means the customers don't have it, which means we haven't gotten paid for it. So it's holding your cash hostage every time you have work in process between your processing steps. Huge amounts of pallets. And of course, then you need more floor space to accommodate it between each of your processing steps. So we're walking through here and there's just massive amounts of work in process. So they need more workspace, and that's just money sitting there tied up. And the customers don't have the stuff yet. And then I see their finished goods warehouse filled with products, hoping customers are going to purchase it. So customers haven't bought it yet, but think about everything that's gone into that. Okay, you've waited 2 months for the stuff to come in, you paid for it. Okay, you paid for it months ago. It's waited there. You had to pay leasing for all that space, heat it, light it, count it, secure it. It could get damaged. It finally ekes its way to all of your processing steps where it needs more floor space, right? And it's just sitting there, once again, waiting in between your steps. And now it's finally, after you've invested all these resources and material, it's finally a finished product and you still haven't gotten paid for it, right? Your lead times get so long when you have vast amounts of inventory, so your cash flow is absolutely constricted and you need all of this floor space to accommodate it. So big focus on lean is to just bring in what you need as you need it, right? Keep it going through your processes so it doesn't stagnate and wait and require more floor space and then just keep a small amount of finished goods or an adequate amount of finished goods. There's a whole set of tools around analyzing how much of each product you should keep in your finished goods warehouse, okay? But what we're saying is do your homework. Don't assume you need to keep a huge finished goods warehouse. That's just sucking up your money and sucking up your cash flow, right? Keep it moving. Reduce your lead times so it's really quick turnover between when you pay for this stuff and when you get paid for it. Your customers are happy and you only need half of the floor space that you were paying for before. On to the fifth type of waste, overprocessing. And overprocessing means doing more work to a product than your customer values, right? So doing any sort of feature on a product that maybe your customer goes, I would have bought it anyways. So why would you have done it? Why would you invest the resources and possibly material to do a feature or a characteristic on a product that your customers don't care about? It would have no impact on their decision to purchase your product. So for an example, this is my measuring spoon set from my kitchen. Got it about 6 months ago. Nice stainless steel, dishwasher safe. Don't have to worry about things getting stuck anywhere, nice and clean. When I took it out of the package, I noticed this. I don't know if you can see that very well. Actually, I'm pretty sure you can't. But this little tag actually says on it, measuring spoon set. Now, I thought to myself, what a shame, because I don't really care about this. So why would they have invested the resources and the materials to make that if every customer out there is like me and could care less about this little piece of tag, this little piece of metal that actually says measuring spoon set? In the facility somewhere where they make these, they are using substantial raw material to punch this out. Okay, they're probably polishing down the side so it's not sharp and doesn't cut anyone. Someone's going to have to stamp in measuring spoon set on a machine. Someone's going to have to stamp out the little hole on the assembly line. Someone's going to make sure it's on the ring nicely, probably facing the right way. Right? A lot of work and resources and materials went into creating these. And what a waste. If everyone's like me and says, I would have bought it anyways, why would they have just spent all that money? So you want to make sure that you know exactly what your customers want from your product. This is your product. They want this and this and this and this and this. And if there's something you're doing to your product, because with best intentions you think that's what they want, but if it's not on their list, don't do it. Don't do it. Now, we are not saying just willy-nilly cut characteristics off of your product. Just the opposite. You want to talk to your customers and make sure you understand exactly what they want. And then that's what you give them every single time perfectly. But everything else that's not on the list, don't do it. Why waste your resources? So that's overprocessing. On to the sixth waste, defects. And defects are product or paperwork errors. Lots of words for these, mistakes, scrap, rework, oops, whatever you want to call it. You know, you've already invested resources and materials to make a product, right? And if you can't sell it, if you're lucky, you can invest more resources and possibly materials to fix it and sell it. If you're unlucky, you got to scrap it. Just thrown out or recycled. What a waste. What a waste. I was recently working with a custom metal fabricator, and I was taking a walk through their facility, and we just happened to stop in front of one of their processes, and it's actually a brake press. So the brake press bends metal into all different shapes and curves. And they just happened to mention nonchalantly that, oh yeah, this brake press always has 10% defects coming off of it. So any order that comes in that we know is going through this process, we just make an extra 10%. Are you kidding me? There's a process that they know there's 10% defects coming off of it. So every order that comes in going through that process, they just make an extra 10% to make up for it. Oh my word. Think of the resources and the materials, right? So from a lean perspective, what we would want to do is get the team together and say, hey, we're having a big problem here. We have 10% defects coming off of here. What's going on? And come up with a root cause. Why is this happening? Is it because we don't have training for the employees working there? Is it because we haven't maintained the machines properly? So they're not functioning correctly anymore? Have they maybe just come past their life cycle? It's just time to get new ones? What is the root cause? Don't guess. What is the actual root cause of these defects? And then as a team, let's come up with a solution to prevent them from ever happening, right? So not only would you be saving your 10% defects, you're also saving an additional 10% of the additions they were adding on to cover the defective product. Wow. Defects, big. Actually, defects, in my experience, are highly underestimated, especially in office areas. We seem to think if it's paper, that it's not really important, right? So if you get an order and it's incomplete, you got to pick up the phone. That's time that you shouldn't have had to do if we would have got all the information to begin with, right? If you have a wrong order and you have to white out, you have to go into the computer and fix it, we don't see that as a big waste. And in fact, it's probably far more prevalent in an office environment and far more costly than on a manufacturing floor. Because on a manufacturing floor, we can see it, so it tends to ring a few more bells, right? So defects, where are they happening? What is the root cause? And how do you involve your team to figure out a solution? Now, on to the seventh and final waste, overproduction. And overproduction means producing more product sooner than the next step or your customer is ready for. So I'm working on the work floor, and I'm working and working and working and I'm working really hard because the customer's waiting for this order and I know we got to get it out. So I'm working and working and I'm going to make a big batch of product and I'm going to push it downstream to the next step. And breathe a sigh of relief. The only problem is the next step isn't ready for it yet. They already got work to do. They're not ready for this and they're not going to be ready to work on this for a long time. So what did I just invest my resources and my time and that material for? No reason. I could have been off doing something else that adds value, right? So that's overproduction. And it is by far the worst of all of the wastes because it magnifies all of the other wastes except for overprocessing. So if I'm working as fast as I can, producing a big batch and putting it downstream, pushing it downstream to the next process, it's now sitting there because the next step isn't ready for it. It's become inventory, basically. So, we paid for it maybe weeks ago and it's sitting here waiting now. And if it's waiting, that means our customers don't have it. So they're not happy and we haven't been paid for it. It's taking up floor space. People have to move around it. So we've built in more transportation. We're going to have more motion because inevitably someone's going to have to pick it up and put it down a few times. We could cause damage if people are tripping over it. And even further with defects, think about that. If I just made a whole batch of this product, if I did something wrong, not only have I done something wrong with one or two, I've done something wrong on this entire pile of product now. And who knows when that's going to be found? It could be days before it's found. And then at that time, how are they going to know where the problem originated? So there's no way we can even pinpoint what the root cause of the error was so that we could do problem solving and prevent it from happening again. So that's overproduction. Anytime you walk out onto a work floor and you see product waiting in front of a processing step, waiting for its turn to go through, that means overproduction has taken place. You've just utilized resources and materials to create parts of a product or materials that are now just creating all of the other types of waste except overprocessing, right? So a huge focus on lean is just on reducing or eliminating overproduction, because if you can do that, you are greatly reducing all of the other types of waste we've been talking about. So huge focus on, how do you just produce what the next step is ready for? And everyone's doing that. We're all working in synchronicity with each other. So there's lots of tools on how to do that. I'm going to share lots of stuff with you in future videos and on the website. So stay tuned for that, okay? So that wraps up our discussion on what lean is and what the 7 types of waste are that lean is focused on reducing. Now, in the next video, I'm going to introduce you to value streams, which is really the foundation for starting to see where these wastes are happening within your business so you can formulate an action plan to get rid of them. So we'll see you in a few days with that video, and in the meantime, make every action count.